I know people don't always like this.
Mark? Absolutely, thank you. All right, good evening all. My name is Mark Klotzbach, and I just have to tell you all, I am so excited to be here and am so grateful for all of you showing up tonight. It's a Tuesday night, we have a Phillies game at 8:07 or something of the sort. We're at a library, and this is a politically oriented event. So to have this turnout is really a testament to you and the Rosemont Villanova Civic Association. So thank you. I say this very sincerely. I want to start by thanking my opponent, Maggie, for what Maggie and I are doing, what we volunteered to do, is grueling. This process is intensive, and at the end of the day, we're volunteering to do this. But because we have a competitive election, our township is going to be so much better at the end of this process because we have a fair and competitive election occurring right now. And I just think that's awesome. Competition to me is core to our democracy and core to improving our systems, our operations, etc. So I'm just really excited. All of this here, this is everything to me. This is community. And in my personal experience, especially during the COVID quarantine period, having a strong sense of healthy, dynamic community is essential to quality of life. Now, as that relates to the commissioner role, strong, healthy, dynamic communities are fundamental to the efficient and effective management of shared resources, our shared resources. So you think our township parks, our natural spaces, our infrastructure, our services, our police, our fire services. When we have strong, healthy, engaged communities, we all end up better. So if elected as your commissioner, I will continue my track record of strongly supporting our civic associations, our environmental conservation and land preservation organizations, and our other nonprofits, because it's these groups that bolster the social fabric of our community and ultimately enable accountability and responsibility. So I really look forward to participating in that. I need to pivot just a little bit. Since March of this year, I've knocked on about 600 homes. I've gotten to really know and understand our neighborhood and the various dynamics of Ward 11. And I'll be the first one to tell you one of the reoccurring themes that comes up is, one, what's a commissioner? Two, what does a commissioner do? And three, what is Ward 11? So I think as you all prepare for your vote, it's really behoove of you all to have a good understanding of what the role of the Board of Commissioners is, and to ensure that the respective candidates' experience, credentials, etc., intentions align with the role that they are pursuing. So at the end of the day, there's about 65,000 residents in Lower Merion, between maybe 60, 65,000. Lower Marion's broken up into 14 wards. This is Ward 11. Ward 11, we're running for, we're actually in Ward 10, I believe. Ward 11 is made up primarily of Bryn Mawr, a piece of Rosemont, a piece of Gladwin. The Board of Commissioners has jurisdiction over all of the township resources, assets, and services other than the school board, other than the school district. The school board has jurisdiction over the schools. Just a brief note on the school board, where the board and the school district interact is on land development. So whenever the school board pursues development activities, that is where the interaction of the Board of Commissioners gets involved. So I think it's really important just to keep that in the back of your minds as you do your diligence over the next handful of weeks to really understand what this role entails. Lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about myself. My wife, Jill, and I live on the corner of Millbank and New Gulf Road. We have 2 great boys. I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, started a business about 11 years ago, environmental services business, after a background working in New York and financial services. And in the last 5 years, a group of neighbors and I started a nonprofit for the benefit of a township park, the Harrington Preserve, with a stated mission of improving the preserve, ensuring the vitality of the preserve through awareness and community engagement. So for the last handful of years, I've been very involved in the township civically and with a real emphasis on land preservation and environmental conservation. So at the end of the day, I am looking to continue my track record of service here and in the township, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Being out here, I know it's hard to come out on a weeknight, so thank you so much for being engaged and for listening to us and giving us your time. A little louder? Oh, I'll go full teacher voice. Okay, let me know if it needs to come down. And I appreciate he explained the wards and the commissioners. I also have been canvassing, and I think I will agree 100%. I spend a lot of time just answering, what is the ward? What does the commissioner do? And I feel like, well, if nothing else, as we're knocking doors, we have educated some voters, and so that feels really valuable. I always drive a few of my kids around, so I think also, if nothing else, I've taught them a little bit about service, a little bit about civic engagement, and we've taken a nice walk and met some great people. Also, I will say Ward 11 has, I think, the cutest dogs and front doors, but that's a side note, something I've learned. So let me introduce myself. This is my least favorite part. So I will tell you all my motivations for being commissioner, but I should have thought more about the campaigning. The campaigning part is tough because you have to talk about yourself, and I'll be honest, I would much rather hear from you. I would much rather let's solve some problems and do some work. So I'm just gonna slow it down and give you like the basic facts. My name is Maggie. I've lived here in Lower Merion for a little more than 6 years with my family. They're kind of throughout the audience there. I have 3 kids in Lower Merion schools. My husband is here as well. I was a teacher for 20 years, and I taught environmental science and taught through COVID. I taught at Baldwin, which some of you might know, it's right here. And teaching through COVID was, as I'm sure a lot of you can imagine, is exhausting. And it was kind of a motivation. I realized I loved solving novel problems and getting involved in different things. And as the head of the science department, I was able to engage in some of these different new problems throughout COVID, and at the end of it decided to career pivot. So now I work in the private sector. I work for Comcast in program management, but I've had this great experience, a somewhat humbling experience, of having to do something new. And now I'm doing another thing that's new. I'm getting involved in politics. So why am I here? I was motivated because my kids had to wait outside for the bus, and there's no sidewalk. And it was really dangerous. It kind of still is. They just got bigger and better able to navigate it. So that's when I started reaching out, and that's when I figured out what a ward commissioner is and what a ward is, and started getting myself more educated and involved. I don't have the sidewalk yet. I will eventually get this sidewalk, hopefully before my children are out of the house. But once I got involved in sidewalks, and I saw the sustainability plan, I saw that this was an opportunity for me to bring my expertise, all of my years of teaching environmental science, my background rooted in science, to help implement this plan. It is so important. So that's why, when I'm really tired and I'm not feeling like knocking doors, that's why I'm not knocking doors. Because I want us to do as much as we can as a community. And I feel like I bring something that's new and kind of exciting. So that's me. And echoing the gratitude, I also think the competition is making it interesting, right? You're all out here. So I hope we have some interesting questions, and I'm excited to answer them.
Could you, each of the candidates, explain or give some background? Have they worked with township staff? Have they been on township task forces or interacted with township officials in some capacity?
Yes. I'd say I have pretty significant experience working with various township commissions. when we formed the Friends of Harrington Preserve for the improvement of the Harrington Preserve, which is a Lower Merion Township Park, we immediately went out to Donna Heller at Parks and Rec. We aligned with the Shade Tree Commission. We reached out to the EAC, and we established a pretty significant relationship with the Lower Merion Conservancy to pursue grant funding and to install a story walk throughout the preserve. But it was working with the folks, primarily actually the Shade Tree Commission, Joe McNeil and Orsi in particular, which really showed me the degree of expertise that we have in this township on specific issues such as environmental conservation and land preservation as a whole. So while I'm not the expert, I certainly know how to find the experts in the township because I've done it now for the last 3 years.
Up and down a lot, just say, Commissioner meetings about 1.5 years ago. And if you haven't watched them, they are streamed. You can watch them on your computer, you can watch them on TV. I recommend it because it's how I educated myself on what actually was happening and what resources we had that I wasn't aware of at the time 1.5 years ago. Have I worked directly with township staff over the past 1.5 years? I've worked with some commissioners and spoken to them, and through this campaign process, I've actually gotten to meet a lot of our county officials, talk about different funding we could bring into the township for things like, I'll be honest, I'll say it probably 10 times tonight, sidewalks. Sidewalks are expensive. So direct access, no, I'm new to it. But I know exactly how you can navigate these new kind of problems if you ask and you reach out to people who know. And I agree, you need to reach out to the experts in the situation. Okay.
Great.
Like you, Maggie, nor a Republican like you, I'm an independent. And I'd like you to comment on 3 issues, please. 1 national, 1 state, 1 local. National, do you or do you not agree that Joseph Biden is legitimately elected president of the United States? State, what is your position on the abortion matter in Pennsylvania? And 3rd, the local issue. I've noticed along Montgomery Avenue, Lancaster Avenue, large amounts of development with lots and lots of new buildings and lots of people coming to the township, and it appears to be more crowded generally. How can we make sure that Lower Merion and our ward doesn't turn into a very, very crowded city? Thank you.
Maggie, why don't you go first? Did everyone hear the questions? It was a 3-part question, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, good. So, yes, I first question federal. I believe in legitimacy of Joe Biden's presidency. Yeah, okay, yes, full stop. I am pro-choice, also kind of full stop on that one. So we can get into the nuances, but I'm right there. When it comes to local, I agree. And when talking about this seemingly like this burden, it's great that we have a lot of people coming in, but we need to be very mindful of the impact it has. And I think all the time about when we have this development, are we requiring environmental impact statements? And for me, with my background in environmental science, I always think about the lessons I would teach about runoff and how much runoff can bring pollution into our watershed. And as we build, it's coming off the rooftops, it's coming off of all this impervious surface. And it's a concern I have. I think we just need to be, I don't think development's, that's not where I can say yes, no, full stop. It needs to be very mindful, very thoughtful, and very well planned.
Excellent. Fortunately or unfortunately, it might be a carbon copy of Maggie's answer, but yes, Joe Biden is our president, 100%. I am pro-choice as well. And development, I call it responsible development. And you really have to look at the environmental impact that development has on a community. Two of my biggest causes are just stormwater awareness to ensure that we have appropriate infrastructure to handle the stormwater and or offset it, and then tree canopy. Those are my 2 biggest environmental issues, 100%. And I think the more awareness and, dare I say, control that we have over stormwater management and tree canopy, the better off we will be with respect to development.
Thank you.
What are the top 3 issues facing the township, and what is your opinion on each?
Awesome question.
Did everyone hear the question? Ask the candidates what's their top 3 issues that they think the township faces, and what's their position on those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Our police chief, McGrath, is retiring, so we need to immediately find a new police chief. Given the underlying employment market and the dynamics with respect to recruiting law enforcement personnel, this is going to be an intensive search. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of consideration. So right there is the first biggest issue. The second biggest issue, this is a hot button issue, is Oakwell. I'm for Oakwell, the development of Oakwell. I'm for the preservation of Oakwell. That's really the second biggest issue. And then lastly is the sustainability plan. This is a big initiative that Lower Merion Township is taking on, but I think it's probably behooving me to just ensure that we're all on the same page with respect to this sustainability plan. The sustainability plan is ultimately kind of derived from the comprehensive plan that was called, that was enacted in 2016 from Lower Merion Township. Since 2016 to current, the township has been an incredible steward of our environment as a whole. We've done a significant amount of work to date. This roof here in Ludington Library is quote unquote a green roof. This sustainability, and it's actually referenced in the sustainability plan here. The Ballard Kinwood Library has a energy efficient heating, cooling, HVAC system. We've installed LED LED lighting all throughout the township. So all of our road lights are LEDs. We've made a considerable amount of progress on the sustainability end. So while I think that is kind of the third biggest issue, I just wanted everybody to know that it's not like we're going from 0 to 100 with entertaining this sustainability plan. And this sustainability plan is a 170-page document that was released a handful of months ago. It's a very good document. It's global in breadth. And at the end of the day, this is effectively a menu of options of things that we can pursue. So this is going to take a lot of review and a lot of diligence. And if elected as a commissioner, I look forward to aggressively working on this plan and continuing the work that the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners has started since 2016.
Kind of agree and maybe somewhat disagree on this. So my first priority is the sustainability plan. I know you just heard about it. I think there's been wonderful things done, but I think it's time for us to be much more aggressive than we have been as a community. It is a large document. It's actually, you can break it down pretty easily. If you read through it, it's not hard to understand. We need to transition off fossil fuels. We need to look at decarbonization to address climate change. Small acts are great, but as this community and every community should be, we need to prioritize our own footprint for the larger good, because it affects us all. So it's not just the sustainability plan and looking at the menu. For me, it's about actually really implementing it and not just talking about it. And there are many features there. Beyond that, we have electric vehicle infrastructure is really important. We need to look at these things not 10 years from now, not staging it out, but how do we do it now? We're very well positioned financially. This is something we should prioritize. I also that's a big one. I'm going to say walkability, I think, is important. I think walkability as a community for our kids, it's how they are safe. It's how we build our community. That my kids can walk to the library from Newell and I don't have to worry because there would be sidewalks. That'd be great. So whatever we need to do in our discrete neighborhoods to make sure that all of our community is safe is something that would be a priority. I also think we need to look at how the board reaches out to the community and gets some more diverse voices. We need more engagement within the broader community. I wish we had multiple candidates running for every commissioner position. That's not the case. We need more people actively engaged. I'll be honest, I'll say this, women don't get involved in politics as much as men do. There's so many statistics out there. We need more women to run. if my opponent were to take office, it'd be 12 men and 2 women. Maybe that's a small thing, for me it's a big thing. Because I'm sitting here and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I want my daughters to also know that women should be involved in politics. It's hard, it takes a lot of time. But yeah, those are mine.
I think it's really admirable. Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
I think it's really admirable. With respect to systemic change, i.e. cutting off fossil fuels, something like that is not going to happen overnight. So my approach to making systemic change, if need be, is to take an incremental approach. Because at the end of the day, there are multiple parties and entities involved, and you have to start on an incredibly local level. You have to take incremental steps. So that's how I approach that. With respect to sidewalks, with due respect, after knocking on over 600 homes, I've never once heard a resident raise the issue of sidewalks. For those of you that might not know, the demographics of Ward 11 are pretty interesting. The lots are larger as a whole. The homes are offset. They're could be up to 100 yards off the street. I've never once heard an ask for sidewalks. I don't think the majority of neighbors, frankly, want sidewalks as a whole. Other areas of the township, I believe bike lanes and sidewalks are more applicable. But in Ward 11 as a whole, I've walked every single street. You know, there are more gated driveways than, stop signs. So I don't know where sidewalks are going to come into play.
I can name a few places. So the residents in Beaumont would like sidewalks. All the kids who go to Harriton would like to be able to access their school where there's no sidewalks leading up to it. So we're knocking on different doors.
Beaumont's a private community though.
But the street outside of their development does not have sidewalks, so they can't leave their development. This is what I've heard from the residents of Beaumont. When they exit Beaumont, they are now on a road with no sidewalks. So there is no way for them to access. So I have heard it. It's not just me alone screaming about sidewalks. We have apartment buildings. We do. Yes, we have many gated homes that are far off the street. I don't live in one of those personally, and my neighbors don't either. My neighbors on my street live right off the street with no sidewalk. Where we have Baldwin, Shipley, Bryn Mawr College, and the Bryn Mawr train station. I have watched students narrowly escape death several times.
On your stretch of New Gulf from Morris essentially up to the Redeemer, yes, that is a high traffic area.
It's dangerous, yeah.
That's one block.
That is one block, and there are others. We could go back and forth on this, but that's my opinion.
It's interesting, there's a difference here. I'm just going to get some clarification. Tiffany, maybe you can get this. My understanding is the sidewalk policy that's been adopted, and that certain sidewalks have been designated and budgeted, but there is no sidewalk in Ward 11 that's currently in the budgeted plan. Is that right?
That's correct. Spot on, yes.
Okay.
And the sidewalk on the school, on the Harrison High School side would be something that would fall within the jurisdiction of whatever the school board wanted to do with that area. And a couple of years ago, we actually discussed this thoroughly with traffic safety, with the Lower Merion Police Department, the school, Beaumont, Daring Lane, that whole neighborhood there. And it was really, it is not something that will work there. We did do no parking, no standing, no idling for children, and it really was giving parents of the teachers, the parents of the students who are going to school to play a little safer as they're driving children from school. It is really the most impactful change can be the behavior of a driver, not the sidewalk. And the few homes there to your neighborhood and up toward the high school, we talked to each one of them, and they don't want the responsibility of the sidewalk there right now.
Because they all cut through people's backyards to get
No,
them.
actually, I'm going to say this, since we brought this up. What you said to me is I would have to pay for it myself as my commissioner, and that's one of the reasons I'm running, because that was the answer I got. So to be clear, even if Ward 11, actually, yeah, I know, but you're talking. So even though Ward 11 may not have tons of sidewalk need, I will say that we represent Ward 11, we would be making decisions for the entire township. And there are areas of the township that desperately need sidewalks. I have spent a lot of time with our county commissioner candidates, our state representatives, and am excited to hear that there is money that we can bring in from the county to get help with this, because I do know it's expensive, and I do understand that. But getting outside help from the county would be fantastic for Lower Merion. And that's something I'm already working on and would love to continue working on for the entire township.
Down by ward, and Ward 11 gave fairly low marks to Lower Merion Township services in the area of street repair and traffic signal timing. I was just kind of curious about that, and whether either of you have any perspectives on why Ward 11 residents who completed that survey gave low marks to the township in those areas. Mark, go ahead.
This might be a hotbed here. Well, since COVID, traffic on our roads has significantly increased. Prior to COVID, you go up to the Bryn Mawr train station right across the street here, and the train stations were filled with people. It was actually awesome to see. During COVID, obviously, commuting presumably to the city was significantly reduced, but thus our roads really have, just my unscientific basic take on it, have become more congested. So I'm sure there's a wear and tear element, to our roads as a whole. But it's funny. The delivery of municipal services is a kind of core element that the board has jurisdiction over. With that, constituent servicing, i.e. being the middleman between the constituent and the township staff, is also primary to the responsibility of the Board of Commissioners. So, if elected as your commissioner, I will give it my all to be entirely responsive to constituent inquiries where there may be a pothole, and I'll do my darndest to fix that pothole. I've already done it on my own block. So that's my take on it.
Maggie?
Yeah, I agree. Being a strong advocate is important, even when the concern of the resident doesn't fit the exact letter of policy. Continuing to advocate and find other solutions, I think, is really important. It's an active service, and I'll say again, this is a volunteer position, but that active service is what you're saying you will give. Lower Merion, budget-wise, is very well off. We have a substantial reserve. We need to start. We haven't put money into capital improvements. We're cutting staff. We need to start investing in our township and putting the money where we need the repairs to ensure the safety and the high quality of living that Lower Merion promises. And I think that why not just start doing that? We hear these complaints. Where can we make some changes? Let's make some changes. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to see us invest a little more.
This is our capital improvement program right here, by the way.
Yes, sir.
For Maggie.
Yeah.
Where would you invest more, and how big is the reserve that you would tap and spend on these improvements?
So I'll use a concrete example. The $15 minimum wage for township staff was voted down. So I'll use the example of lifeguards, who make sure our children are safe at the pools, if you use the community pools. The board voted to not pay them a minimum wage of $15. That would have almost no budget impact, less than 1%, fractional. I think it was $80,000 total to raise all those salaries to $15 an hour. That's a place where we should invest. Those are our kids mostly working at our pools to watch our other kids. So let's invest there. Let's invest in our community. I think fixing things that need to be fixed, like the roads, let's look at how we do that. The goal is not to hoard money. The goal is we need to stay solvent, but we also need to improve and enhance the amenities of our township. That's the mission statement of that budget. So that's what I'd like to do.
Yes, back here. I'm sorry, yes, Danielle.
Sorry, thank you. So Lower Merion is currently, this is a question for both. So Lower Merion is currently in litigation over its recently passed federal firearms ordinance. In the event that the township loses that case against Shop Tech, would your position be to accept that loss or to appeal? And then separately, what is your position overall on retail gun sales in Lower Merion Township?
Interesting question. Mark, you want to go first and then Ray?
Yep, and just to clarify, so Shot Tech in Bala Cynwyd, is that where they were located?
Shop Tech in Bala Cynwyd that's looking and hoping to expand to other areas of Lower Merion.
Right, and if, your question was if the
I'm
township...
sorry, are you not familiar with the ordinance and the situation?
Is that a question?
No, I'm asking if you would like for me to give you further background.
I'm first of all, I'm trying to clarify your question. If the township loses the lawsuit, would I be happy resting? Is that?
Yes. Or would you want to appeal further or to ensure that the ordinance, to do everything possible for the ordinance?
I would defer to the courts from the get-go, and I don't have enough, I frankly don't have enough information, so I would defer to however it is ruled and then assess options, 1. 2, no, I agree. We don't need to have firearm retailers here in Lower Merion Township.
So
Matt, you want to address?
Yeah, I would not defer to the courts. So, and you can see this on my social media, I don't hide this. I am pro-gun control. I worry about my kids every day. And if you don't, you haven't been watching the news, if you're not worried about it. So, if the township, the municipality of Lower Merion, we should be able to decide what kind of stores we have. And if we're being limited by the state, then I suggest we appeal that, I suggest we push back, and I suggest we do what we need to do to not have retail gun sales in Lower Merion. Full stop, that's what I believe.
Okay. Yes, sir.
As a follow-up, this is for both candidates. So we had a short-term rental in Bala near the Shot Tech store that you're talking about. On the entire drive, so City Line Avenue, basically from where the Giant is all the way over to the Wendy's, with the rental that we had was, we just came down from New York City, right?
Yeah.
So getting our daughter into school, that kind of a thing. Every single store there has been robbed at gunpoint at least 6 or 7 times, okay? And we have this crime encroachment that has been coming over from Bala Cynwyd that's encroaching in this direction. All right, so the question for both of you is really this. Lower Merion is currently understaffed in terms of the police department. We have money for infrastructure and improvements, I see that. But in light of what is going on internationally right now, specifically given the fact that we've got Jewish and Muslim populations here, what would you look to do in terms of increasing security, safety, and just really kind of the community, kind of keeping the community together that way?
Yeah.
Before you answer, did everyone hear, the question was about safety and security in Lower Merion and the understaffed police force that exists currently?
Yeah. I'll say, first of all, I hate hearing that. I'm sorry. That's an awful thing to live with and sit with. So the police force, we have an amazing police, Lower Merion police are fantastic, expertly trained, wonderful police, but we need more of them. That's 40% of the budget. It's a big chunk, and when I talk about what we need to invest in, maybe we need to invest more. We need to do what we need to do to have the appropriate police force to keep us safe. I believe that's
So
strongly.
with the cascading increase you're thinking about in salaries,
Yeah.
would you be interested in increasing the salaries of the police force to attract candidates?
I would look at every option to attract candidates. We have great candidates, we have great police officers. We're not losing them. We're losing them to better positions. They're moving on, they're getting offers from federal agencies. I think one is now the police chief at our neighboring community. So yeah, I would look at what we need to do. I think that's a really important commitment to make. And it's a large part of our budget, so I think it's a large part of the Board of Commissioners' job to look at how we do that and how we make sure we have the appropriately staffed and equipped police force.
Absolutely. And I know, especially during the COVID period, right on the Philadelphia-Lower Merion border, there was an increase in crime activity, and our frontline police took the brunt of that. I can tell you firsthand, through working with the police, the morale throughout the ranks is incredibly low. Recruitment and retention right now, and I don't care what industry you're in, but especially in law enforcement, is incredibly difficult. So 100% all options are on the table to ensure that we have a dynamic, well-trained police force.
Other questions, please? In the back? Ma'am?
What is your fiscal responsibility? What does that mean to you? Fiscal
Yeah.
responsibility for a township, for a
Right.
business, for...
I think it means aligning what we spend with the priorities of the community, making sure you hear the community, and what we spend reflects that. So if we're hearing, the Bryn Mawr Community Center, which needs repair on the 3rd floor to be usable, and that's something the community needs, then the fiscally responsible thing to do would be to invest in the community and do the repairs we need to do to make that useful. Looking at something like sustainability plan, we're literally investing in the health and safety of our township for generations to come by solving problems now. So to me, fiscal responsibility means making really smart investments that ensure our township is excellent now and in the future.
So when you talk about the salaries for the lifeguards, who are those lifeguards? Are they young kids or are they adults?
I think it's a mixture sometimes. Don't know the exact demographics, but yeah, sometimes they're teenagers.
Okay, so a 15-year-old teenager, you think that they have to make $15 an hour?
I do because they're guarding the safety of children in a pool, and if they can earn as much working at any other, my son can earn that working at the restaurant he works at, then a child who's using their time, even if you're calling the child as a teenager, to protect children and also to make our community a better place to live, yes, I think $15 an hour is fair. I don't pay my babysitter less than that. So I would not expect a lifeguard to make less than that.
Mark, do you want to address the question?
Yeah, just because we have money doesn't mean, one, we need to spend money. Two, we really need to understand the underlying impacts of, the respective appropriations of funds to whatever we're doing and the real immediate necessity, but yes, also planning for the future. So, I know it's a short answer, but, we can go down a rabbit hole 6 different ways on this one.
But
So I think
she asked me directly, do you think they shouldn't make $15 an hour?
lifeguards? Quite frankly, my sister was a lifeguard when she was 16. I was a lifeguard when I was 17 at our local pools. I know, so I'm just relating it back to my experience with lifeguards as a whole in our community pools. I'm just thinking of the demographic. They're probably in high school through college. What is the current going rate? $15?
That's the minimum wage that I would like to see them have. But I don't know what you're asking me, the going rate for...
What's the current rate for the lifeguard? What are they currently getting paid?
Oh, actually, I would have to look it up. I think, is it hovering around, it's less than 15, 9 through 13, I believe.
Okay, I honestly, I'd have to look at the underlying dynamics. Yes, a lifeguard is more of a high-touch position where you want a experienced, capable individual that is responsible, and that's who I certainly would want at watching my children. But I'd have to honestly go back to the market, and I do.
My point really
Yeah.
is the fiscal responsibility.
Right.
You say we have money, let's spend money. And that's, I guess.
For the
I'm
$15,
concerned
I would
about
give
that.
$15.
Just because there's money doesn't mean that we should spend money. We have to.
But there's a
pay the
need.
taxpayer also.
Yes, now, the taxes, your township taxes are 10% of your taxes. So this is low compared to the other taxes. I will honestly say I would give every Lower Merion Township staffer $15 an hour. Whether they are, lifeguard is a great example, but they don't have to be. Because I think that's fair. I think that money comes back into the community when they are living and shopping and doing what they need to do.
The wages have changed throughout the years, and as an employer that has created over 2,000 jobs in the last 11 years, that has 70 employees, I certainly have my finger on the pulse of, what the, skilled and unskilled markets are. You have to look at the underlying mechanics of the respective markets, the qualifications, the pool, that's out there, and make the decision, so.
Great. Before you, the gentleman in the back, did you have? No, over here.
Yes, it did.
And then-
Are you tagging onto this? or-
I'm gonna talk about this.
I was changing this up.
Okay, I mean, honestly, I challenge anybody here to try and survive on $7 an hour or whatever minimum wage is. I think minimum wage, in Pennsylvania is, wages in Pennsylvania in general are pretty low compared to a lot of other states.
Yeah, no, you're entirely accurate, and it's,
And whether they're in high school or whatever, if they're old enough to work, they should be respected just like anybody else. There's a lot of young people who are really talented that are being suppressed with how well they can do because there's a stigma on their age and how much someone should be paid at a certain age. And it's honestly the greed that comes from a lot of employers that aren't taking care of the people that are running their companies is infuriating.
Yeah,
15 should be minimum wage,
correct.
and I think that's low.
Great.
I want to keep going with questions, though.
I'm sorry.
Here.
Yeah, I have for both of you.
Yeah.
Could you describe your experience in balancing budgets outside of your household budget?
Oh, sure. I'll go first. I don't have a family business, but I was the head of the science department at the Baldwin School and my previous employer. And I did have to work with that budget. We had our whole building, a facilities budget, a consumables budget within the school. Currently, I work at Comcast in program management, and I'm working in budget management as well. So resource procurement and forecasting budget is something that I have worked with and am working with now.
Do you have a financial background?
No, I don't. Educationally, I have multiple degrees in environmental science.
I started a business 11 years ago with 2 partners. We have a very successful business, and we perform serious work throughout the country. We've navigated serious challenges, especially through the COVID quarantine period, and I have a significant amount of experience on the fiscal end.
Yes.
I'm Gerald Parisi. I'm also running for school board. I'm an electrical engineer and I drive an electric car, so I understand the cost of electric infrastructure. So my question is, given the lofty goals of sustainability and other expensive plans like sidewalks, how do you plan to maintain the low township taxes while still achieving these goals? And especially from a diverse lens, I think taxes continue to increase. We'll have trouble attracting new residents, let alone a diverse group of residents.
Sure. You want to take this or me?
Yeah, and that is the fine balance. As we pursue this sustainability plan program as a whole, the truth is, it's going to cost money. We are relatively well off with some of the federal funds that we've received throughout the COVID period, and it's just about being responsible in how we assess our capital improvements as a whole. We can't do this overnight. We have to take incremental steps. We have to bring in the experts to guide us along the way, but just be mindful to the real necessity of whatever the spend is.
I'll jump in. So we haven't had a tax increase in 12 years, at least 12 years, which if you account for inflation is actually like a 27% decrease. I'm not saying I want to raise taxes. I think the average tax bill for township taxes is about like $125 a month. But I'm not saying I want to raise them. I'm saying that the Board of Commissioners has been budgeting for a deficit for years that hasn't happened. So we have a substantial reserve. So maybe we need to relook at how we budget and realize we don't need to plan for that deficit that's not been happening. Or maybe we need to spend some of this money that we have in reserve. Again, do I want to raise taxes? No. But am I saying it's forever off the table? No, I'm not saying that either. It's a small amount, and it's something I would seek alternatives to, but we should also be aware, again, we haven't raised taxes in 12 years. It's a low percentage of your tax bill, it's 10%.
Why don't we sum up, if you would? Maggie first, and then Mark, unless you have another question.
Yeah, just in regards to what you both just said on taxes. So Pennsylvania is currently not so high in terms of mortgage failures, but what we're looking at is probably somewhere between a 13 to 22% default on mortgages across the state, starting probably Q2 next year. So given the fact that we have fiscal surpluses right now, what are your plans to actually maintain sort of the stability of what we have moving forward into, and understanding that there may be tax deficits that are actually quite substantial future forward?
It's a really good question.
Why don't you go, Mark, and then-
It's a really good question. I am questioning the certainty, the economic certainty of 2024, especially with the interest rates where they are. So I think we are kind of in a perfect position to right now hold the line on tax increases with the potential uncertainty that we are seeing. In my own experience, 2020, 2016, during the presidential election years, the first 6 months of the year, activity really kind of plateaued out. So, I think it's just prudent to hold the line until we see how our next economic cycle plays out into 2024, because I still have serious questions of what 2024 is looking at like. And quite frankly, I don't think interest rates are coming down by any means.
Yeah, and I would reiterate, I don't think raising taxes is in our near future. It's not an option we need to look at now. I think that.
But you just said marginal increase, so that would be off the table?
I'm saying nothing's off the table in perpetuity. I think at some point, if we get years down the road, there is something we need to fund or feel like we need to fund the sustainability plan that we can't find alternatives to, then perhaps we're looking at that. When I see that we've been planning for a deficit that we're not hitting and we have these substantial reserves, and this example we were using of $15 would be less than 1% of a budget impact, I think we're not looking at raising taxes right now. I certainly am not. I'm seeing that there's places in the budget where we need to reprioritize and maybe look at how much we hold in reserve and how much we put back into our community. I also think the ARP funds that we get, instead of for capital improvements, should be directly impacting community members, like helping people out. That's what it was for.
Yes.
This is an obvious question. Maggie, we heard Mark's position on Oakwell. What
Oh,
is
yeah.
yours?
So, from his environmental science teacher, I think, oh my gosh, trees, we need to say this is ecosystems, this is so important, they're carbon sinks. And I also have a child in Black Rock Middle School, and they deserve fields, so I know that it's a school board decision, but I also know that the Board of Commissioners has been working really hard to find alternative sites, and I would love to continue that work so that we can hit both those priorities. We can save Oakwell, and we can also make sure our students have playing fields that they deserve.
Commissioner Zeloff has been very helpful in that regard, too. Yes, sir.
When you say, Maggie, that we haven't raised taxes, are you talking about the tax rate, which is tied to real estate values? So we're paying more.
Your tax rate has not gone in 12 years.
The
right?
rate hasn't gone up.
Right.
But obviously, what the rate is tied to has increased, so we are paying more in dollars. Is that correct?
Yes, but also we have to look at the surrounding townships and how they have been raising, and we've been keeping
I'm
it low.
just saying, the taxes have gone up.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you both were talking about the sustainability plan and how many pages it is and how detailed it is and how specific it is. And Maggie, I heard you say that you wanted to be more aggressive with the sustainability plan.
Yeah, I'm
And
sorry.
so my question is, where do you want to be aggressive?
And I wonder if aggressive is the right term. I want us to take action. So I think it's, okay, sure. I think specifically we need to look at transferring off fossil fuels. We need to look at energy transition. That element of the plan I think is really important. I think electric vehicle infrastructure is really important in starting to transition our fleets. But also from natural resources, let's invest in rain gardens so we don't have to pay so much for stormwater fees. And those are some of the priorities. I know people are leaving.
One of the first things I would do is I would convert all of our township landscaping equipment to battery powered. Something easy
yeah.
you can do right off the bat. You can get blowers, you can get lawnmowers, etc., and go to battery power. And that's something, you know, you could roll out very quickly, and it will make a real impact, because quite frankly, on a Saturday morning when I hear my neighbor's lawnmower go off at 9 a.m., you know.
Good question. Of course, the sustainability plan you mentioned is 100 and some pages. Sally and I actually worked on part of it, but it's a mammoth document. And so getting what would be the next step in that implementation is really a great question. I just want to take one or two more questions. And
School taxes.
Yeah.
And the tie-in back to the commission is that the school tax increase is mostly driven by like new buildings, like the junior high school, expanding the high schools. And that comes because we have an increase in population of school-age children, which comes because of the multi-unit development in the township. So should there be some new thinking about how we regulate the multi-unit development in a township, because that is really direct impacting us the most in our taxes.
Yeah, and I think that's where I say all development should require an environmental impact statement, because it cascades, right? So if we're building a new building, we should look at what is that impact for how much space we're going to take up and what's happening. And we need to have the infrastructure before we just bring in as many people as we can. The infrastructure needs to exist, and make sure we're not just overdeveloping too quickly without planning.
I would echo Maggie's answer. We have to develop in a very responsible way. I'd leave it at that.
What does that translate into? What kinds of things would we do differently that would keep multi-unit development reduced?
I'd ensure that we have.
Because that has a major impact on our tax.
We first have to ensure that we have the underlying infrastructure to support the development. So again, for me, when it comes to all things sustainability and environment and kind of environmental awareness, my two big bucket items are stormwater management and the canopy. So if we can really ensure that we have good control over our stormwater management standards and our protection of the canopy standards, that will certainly impact our zoning, and that will, dictate how we develop, subsequent multifamily properties, et cetera.
good. If everyone, I want to have some time for just some mingling around. Some people I know have asked the question before. Is there anyone else who hasn't asked a question?
Yeah. Coming back to Oakwell, is there any circumstance in which you could envision yourself approving a land use plan that would be similar to the one that the school district has proposed?
I'm not sure I fully understand.
Well, in other words, if the school district says, we did our best, we made a good faith effort, this is all we've got, under those circumstances, would you approve the land use plan?
Given like an audit of the Oakville property, if those trees are healthy and the ecosystem is thriving, then I think you'd have to find an alternative, unless there's experts who go out there and say, no, these trees aren't viable, and so there is no value, which I don't think is the case. That would probably be the only situation in which I could see moving forward with that.
The superintendent the school superintendent who ultimately kind of kicked off this whole Oakwell development is no longer the superintendent. In fact, we've had 2 other superintendents after his time served. So I think for me that just raises a massive flag. I think a leader should remain with a massive development effort, and we're now on our 3rd superintendent since Oakwell was kicked off. Additionally, the population growth projection that the school district contracted with Montgomery County to do in 2019, those numbers are way off. They're way below the projection. So again, I am for the preservation of Oakwell, and if elected, I'd put for an immediate halt to all development and go back to the drawing board.
First,
Again, thank you all for coming out. I hope you learned a little bit about both of us. I have information up here you can take. I have a website, I'm on social media, I'm pretty transparent out there. I think what I bring to the table, literally the Board of Commissioners table, is new in that I have a really rich background in environmental science, and not just understanding it, but teaching it and working with people. I've spoken at national conferences about the impacts we have of climate change is having now, and how we have to work with young people to address that. And I think it's one aspect of my experience. It's not the only one, but hopefully you'll consider that when you vote, and hopefully you all just come out and vote.
Absolutely, thank you. Again, I am so grateful that you all showed up here tonight, because at the end of the day, it really takes all of us to make this work. And I will continue to support our civic associations, our environmental conservation orgs, our land preservation groups, to really, I will enable them to bolster our community. I'm frankly going to rely upon our civic associations, our township nonprofits, our land and environmental conservation organizations to effectively bolster our community, because that's how we get things done. So thank you.
great. I want to thank both candidates. And we have some time. I bought cookies from the new supermarket, McCaffrey, so